Moment, and I'm going to move on to the first sort of what do they call this, the sort of emergency notes. So what we're going to do today is fairly heavy in terms of slides, so we'll be racing through, but the key point for everyone to note, please, is that the slide presentation will be made available to you all afterwards. I'll email it to you. And ditto with the recording. So don't worry if we're going too fast. And if you have questions as we go along, you can either interrupt me, which would be good for a laugh, or by all means, please use the chat. And at the end, we can go through the questions. And then if we've run out of time, I can go to through the chat and answer in each individual as necessary. So we are recording, we are sending out all the slides, which we're going to be racing through fairly quickly. Oops. And I think I will press on because some people may well be time oriented. I slightly lied when I said that this session would be half an hour. It may overrun slightly. I hope people are okay with that. If they aren't, we can catch up afterwards. All right, so what we're going to do today is talk about footpaths in Parish Online. We're going to start off by talking about public rights of way, where they come from, who produces them, whether you get them or not, any other third-party layers which can be useful. Then we'll talk about creating your own, styling them, and publishing the results, and then a Q&A session for people to catch up. So I do go through slides for the majority of the presentation purely because that takes care of any glitches in the broadband, or sometimes I'm slower on the mark when I'm doing it by hand in sort of live than I should be. So slides are a quicker and more reliable way of doing it, and it certainly means I then have a presentation to send out to you all. But we can certainly stop and go into Parish Online live, particularly when we get down to the Q&A session. So please feel free to sort of make a note of questions you want to ask that may involve going into Parish Online live. I'm happy to do that. So public rights of way are published in the main by county and unitary councils. So whether you can see them or not really depends upon whether your county is publishing the public rights of way. I imagine most of them are, but they may not have told Parish Online that they're publishing them, and therefore you may not see them in your copy of Parish Online. But there are ways around that. They come in vast varying levels of detail. I get two from Somerset. Unfortunately, the one that's produced in Parish Online is very poor on detail, but another one that they produce from the same county council is absolutely magnificent. So we're trying very hard to get them to replace the first with the second. So in your Parish Online, you may or may not have a collection of layers from your local county council or unitary. But if you do have one, it'll look something like I'm showing on the screen. And usually, if you're getting anything from your county council, it will include the public rights of way. Now, those of you who've not seen the public rights of way, they're a mess, all right? So there is a color coding to this. The sort of by and large, I think the green ones are bridle paths, the pink ones are footpaths, and you can see that at this scale, there's a real mess. So I'm just showing you this as an overview. We're going to zoom into the parish level. You'll note that all these all stop at the Somerset county boundary, so they're very much produced by the county council, just with Somerset in mind, which I guess is fair enough. So we'll move on to the next slide. And this is bringing things down to a bit more like your local village level. And you can see now that the public rights of way are beginning to get numbers on them. So you have an ID for each one, which is really helpful. I've put in the parish boundaries, just you can see where we are and where that ties in with some of the footpaths. Notice that the footpaths do overrun the parish boundaries, so you don't get a stop at the end there. And as with all stuff in Parish Online, if you want to find out more details about anything in a specific location, you just click on it and up it comes. So if I click on this one here, up comes in the left-hand side the data that has been published by the county council. Now, in our case, it's almost useless. You've got a number which is really helpful, and you actually get the system generates for you the length of the path. So in this case, the one we've selected is only sort of just over 200 meters, but I carefully selected that so as not to blind you with science. Because it's a third party layer, i.e. put out by somebody else, you're unable to change it, which is why so many of us go into producing our own footpath layers, even though the data are available from elsewhere. You can't change them. In the ideal world, your county council would allow you to make changes on your copy of Parish Online and then let it upload to theirs. But I haven't found many who are that willing to accept that the locals know better than the people stuck far away in the county town. But you will find that there are errors in the public rights of way. Sometimes they're not all that up to date. Sometimes they show weirdities. We've got several that go through the middle of a lake, for instance, where of course the path actually does go around the lake, but it doesn't show that on the public rights of way. So here's the public rights of way at sort of local level, and they're just very helpful, but you can't do anything with them in terms of adding data to them. So now I would really like to change the picture, but I can't. Why is that? All right. So the next slide is going to show you Rome, Somerset, although actually when you see the slide, it'll say on its title, Explore Somerset, but don't be fooled by that. It's actually called Rome, Somerset. And this is what we're going to try and aim to do with our own footpaths today. So again, when you start off at the county level, you don't see anything very much at all. But when you come down to the local parish level, suddenly interesting data. You've got exactly the same ID names on each of the paths, which is really sort of handy. So here's our little sort of 2120 here. But now you start getting information about features. So you've got signposts, you've got styles, you've got gates. And if you click on these, which is what we're going to do next, you start getting all sorts of interesting details. So here we've got our little local footpath. We've clicked on it. It's come up and told us what it is in terms of the county council's information. But if we now go on and click on the 217653, which is up here, maybe it isn't, but I'm going to click on that and up we come with this detail. That's right, it was 237635, okay. And notice that we've now got tabs along the bottom here, and I'm showing you the core information. You could click on status to see what shape the the feature is, and we'll go into the other two tabs. I'll click on those arrows there, and you can see we get photos and issues. Now, for this particular example, there are no issues, but unfortunately, because the county councils have all had to cut down on their manpower so much recently, a lot of the issues that they record never get fixed. So that's another reason for why certainly we in Long Sutton are getting into footpaths ourselves, because A, we want to find out what the current level of damage is, and B, we want to record it and export the data to the linksman, get them to get on with fixing things. So what we've seen then is you can get public rights of way issued by county councils, and if Parish Online knows about it, they will show them to you. And you can see your own county council, but you can't see anybody else's, which I think is perfectly fair. The issue with those is that the third party layers, so you can't add data to them or amend them, you have to do it yourself. So we're going to do that. We're going to create our own footpath layer. We're going to add footpaths to that layer, and then we'll add the features to the footpaths, and then we'll style and we'll color and produce the results. So what we're going to do today is to create this footpath layer with these levels of data, these columns. Parish Online calls what I call a field, they call a column, because it matches what you get in an Excel spreadsheet. So we're going to store this data and create, because that's what we want to store, we're going to create the layer with those fields in there. Now you can choose any fields that you like, but these are some of the ones that I think people will need. Some people will want fewer, other people will want more, but hopefully by the end of the next few minutes, you'll know how to do that. Note that Parish Online automatically calculates and then displays the length of the path for you. And you may find that as well as the public rights of way, you may find that the National Cycle Network is of interest to you in terms of keeping track of where they go vis-a-vis your footpaths. And they're rather well hidden under a collection called Sustrans in your Parish Online. So if you click on it, if you find Sustrans and click on it, you'll get the National Cycle, which does cover the entire country. So it will cover your area as well. The footpath feature there, which will come towards the end, will really just show the sorts of things that we're tracking to get the sort of results that we could see from that Explore Somerset detail. So the first thing we're going to do is to collect the footpaths layer. And to do that, I just wanted to show you what we're going to create. So we're going to create this footpath here, which is already being produced for us from the public rights of way people, but I'm just using it as an example. So I'm going to click on create new layer, and for some reason it's disappeared. Oh dear. Well, up the top here, there is a tools and create menu. And if you click on create, you get the choice of new layer or add a feature. And in this case, we're going to click on new layer. So that's what I'm doing now. Up comes this little box, which lets you put in a title. Now, this title is what is going to go in your columns over here. So it doesn't want to be too long, otherwise it'll overrun and get in the way of everything. But it just needs to be brief enough to tell you what this title is doing. I'm going to type in actual Footpaths 101, and then I'll click on next. And this is a crucial level because it's got two really useful, or one's essential and one's useful. So the bit about your layer description is where you can use a few more words to describe what it is you're putting in here. And this is really useful if you're coming back to something in 6 months' time, or you're passing over to somebody else and they've got no idea what you meant by Footpaths 101. So they can come here, read the description with much more detail. So I'm going to type that in for you. And I'm also going to click on the geometry type because that's critical. So I'm clicking on that. That gives you a down, a menu. And we're going to be clicking on line because that's the geometry type that we need for footpaths. I should have mentioned earlier on, it's certainly in one of the slides, that one of the hallmarks of Parish Online is you can only have one geometry type per layer. So if we're doing footpaths, we need lines, but if we're doing features on footpaths, there'll be points, which is why we're creating two layers so that you can put the two of them on simultaneously and cover everything. And then for everything else, if you're doing buildings, houses, whatever, planning applications, you'll be in polygons. But for today, we're clicking on lines. So I'm selecting lines. And then it comes up and says, add the columns you want for the information that you want. And that was the list that I created earlier. So I'll click on the plus sign. It comes up and it automatically calls, the new column is name. But you aren't allowed to have more than one column with that name, and you don't need to have any column with that name. So I'm going to change it by clicking on it and typing in path name, or path ID, and then we'll do it again and create path name. So if I click here, I can retype it into path ID, I can retype it into path name. If I click again, you get another one which I've changed to status. Now, status I want to be a drop-down list. In other words, the answers that people can select are fixed so that we try and keep some degree of of data management in our answers. People can spell telephone in 3 or 4 different ways. You want them all to be the same. People can call style is a really good one. Does it have an I in it or a Y in it? That sort of thing. So if you provide the answers, then you save a lot of trouble. So to do that, we click here on the Add Plus column, and it comes up with this little thing that says Add allowed values. What do you want? So I'm just going to go over here and type in good. All right, I want another couple of allowed values. So I click on Add, and I can put in bad, and then I can click on Add again and put in dangerous. And then when I'm happy with all those 3, we click on Confirm. So now we're back to, you can see that there are 3 items in this drop-down list for status. And now we can go and add the other fields. So one by one, you click on plus to add each new one, you change the name, and off we go. So I click on plus again. So to speed things up a bit, I've gone through this. I'm just pausing on date reported, so you can change this to a date field. And if you scroll down, there will be priority columns, and we've allowed values there of 1 to 5. So again, you click on the Add Plus, and you see that and get down there. So I've allowed values on issue priority. 1 is low, 5 is high. When we're happy with that, we click on Confirm. And that was the issue priority up here. It's now got 5 items in it from 1 to 5. And the last thing we want to do is to change this title and put in low 1, 5 max, so that people know what we're looking for, because you don't know whether 1 is the most important or 5 is the most important. Having done that, we can do that, and then we're happy. We're going to make the reported one is going to become a date field, so we'll click on the text there, select the date, and this now becomes a date field. So now we've got all the columns that we wanted for our footpaths layer. Notice that you do have the chance here, if you don't like the order in which these fields are set up, or sorry, these columns, you can change them. You click on one and move it up and down with the arrows. You can move it to the top of the list or the bottom of the list, or just jump it over 1 or 2 places. Or should the need arise, you can delete it altogether, the one that you've highlighted. This is a good point to mention that it doesn't matter if you don't get things perfectly right the first time in Parish Online. It's a piece of cake to go back and edit things later. So we're all set. We'll click on Finish. And the system will save your new layer in the cloud. You will get a pop-up box that says it's been saved properly in green, or it'll be up in red if there was an issue. The only reason that you get an issue usually is that there's just been a glitch in your broadband. So click again. Depending on how things start, you can either be back in Parish Online Maps, or it takes you to the administration page, which we'll get to in a second. But just to show you what happens here, your new layer should be in your Parish Layers collection. So I'm going to click on Parish Layers, and it's way down the bottom, but it is here. So you may, if depending on how many layers you've already got, you may find you've got to scroll down to the bottom of the page, because new layers are always added to the bottom. And in fact, that can be very inconvenient, so we might well change that. Excuse me, I just must grab a drink. So we've created a new layer, which is a line layer. We've put in 8 columns of information in it. 2 of those have got allowed values. 7 of them were in text form, 1's in date. And 1 of the columns needs to be a required column, because it is possible, if you don't have a required column, to click on save when you didn't mean to, and you save a record which has no data in it whatsoever, and then you can't find it later and you can't come back to it. It's very tricky finding records that don't have anything in them. They don't have any name, they don't have any title, they don't have any ID. So it's a good idea to make one of your columns a required column. And I also want to move this new layer to the top of all our parish layers, so that each time we open up the parish layer collection, the footpath is the one that comes to the top. So now we're going to do that. To amend the layer, it's up here in your administration. So we click on the cogwheel, and we click on administration, and up comes this page here, and it looks completely empty, which is rather frightening. But the system, if you look at these little arrows here on a live system, they'd be spinning around. It's downloading your layers, and then all of a sudden they'll pop up like that. Now, again, you will recall that it adds the new layers to the bottom, so we can't even see it here. We'd have to scroll down to find our new edition, which I've done for you. And I've clicked on it to highlight it, because that then means that we can click on this equal sign and drag the footpaths all the way up to the top of the list, which I've done for you here. So we've now got it at the top of the list. And you'll remember that the one thing we wanted to do was to make one of the columns required. So I'm now going to click on this columns tab here, and up pop all the columns that we've just created. You'll see that there's a bunch of columns along here. It's rather confusing that they're all called columns and columns, but search and query are automatically ticked for you by the system. What we want to do is to make the path ID a required column. So we'll click on that, and up comes the required column clicked, and we're happy. I'm not going to do anything else for the moment, but this is just useful for you to know that this field is here under the columns. And now we're happy, so I'm going to click on save. It asks me to check if I really do mean it, so yes, I do. And here comes the little green pop-up box saying it's saved. And then we now want to go back to the maps page, so we click on the maps icon up here in the top right, and back we come. So if you now click on your parish layers, which I'm doing here, you'll see that your actual footpaths has arrived at the top of the list, and you're all set to go. So the now thing we actually need to do is to put some data in there. We've got the footpath layer, but there are no features of any paths in it whatsoever. So we need to do that. The way to do that is to right click anywhere in this actual footpaths layer. So I'm just going to right click. Oh, I shouldn't have done that, sorry. And up comes this little mini menu. And what we're going to do is to add a feature. So you click on add feature, and up pops the data record with all the data that we've just been working on, or rather the columns. And you'll notice that the path ID has been highlighted in red, meaning we really have to fill something in there. And the save button is grayed out, and it won't let you save the record until you've done two things. One is to fill in any required fields, and the other is to actually put something on the map. So I'm going to add some data to the column now, just by typing in the various information that we need. So I've put in the path ID. I've put in a path name, because we're going to go from the Old Forge down to Martock Road. I've gone down to my drop-down list for status, and it comes up with the three choices that we put in there. You can, if you find that you need to put something else other than these three, then you can click on the plus sign and edit it right there and then, which is very convenient. So if you want to have one that says passable or minor or something like that, you can do that. But for right now, I'm just going to click on good. Same difference, go down to the priority fields. That came down with my 1 to 5. So I've selected 1 because there's nothing wrong with this particular path at the moment. The field is owned by Phil Smith. The person who made the report or created this was Fred Jones, and he did it back at the beginning of February. Now, you'll notice that the save button, even though we filled in the required column up here, is still grayed out because we haven't actually put the path on the map yet. So you'll notice on your live parish online that as you move the mouse around the map area, it's no longer a cursor arrowhead like we have here. On your machine, it'll change to a crosshairs, which means it's asking you to line it up on something and click. So we'll line it up at the start of the path, and we'll click once left. That's a left click. And what you get, you won't actually see this, it's just done here for demonstration purposes, is the system dots the start of your path. And then as you move the mouse, you've lifted your finger off the click, so nothing is clicked. As you move the mouse, a blue line will follow you along. And each time you want to change direction, You click once, left click, and then the mouse will let you move off in a different direction and the path will follow you. And you can create corners, you can create curves, you can create turns, you can do everything that way. So if I sort of say that we've done that, then what I've done is I've gone from here, dragged it to there, done a click, dragged it to there, done another click and dragged it to the end. This is not particularly precise because I wanted to show you how it is to edit things later. Now, I'm afraid I ran out of time this morning, so we're suddenly going to get a sudden change of path because I started realizing I'd done the wrong one. So all of a sudden you're going to be editing another path, but the principles are exactly the same. So we clicked on save because the save button had no longer been grayed out. The path changed from blue to red to show that it's in place. In the left-hand column, you will normally get your feature column, which comes up with the feature editor with the record that you're in, and it then goes blank to suggest it's time to put in another record. We're not going to put in another record right away, so we just close off the feature editor by clicking the X at the top, which you can't see because I'm on the wrong slide, but when I get to the next one, you will. So sorry, we've jumped to a completely different path, but this is so I can show you the next step of the way, which is editing the direction of the path with fine tuning. So when I slapped this path in, it was just very quick. We sort of started it, we went to the corner, we did a quick corner up to here, and that was the end of it. On the Ordnance Survey map, you can see the actual footpath is the series of dots that they've got in. So what we want to do is to try and get our red line to follow the actual dotted line on the map, just for today. So click anywhere on the red line to bring up the data record, and it brings up any layer it finds that's got a feature here that you might be interested in. So what we want is the actual footpath, so I'm going to click on that one, and it pops up with the data record here. It pops up, it changes the color of the track to blue so that you know that you're in edit mode. And to actually change everything you want to do, you go into edit mode by clicking on the pencil up here. So I'm clicking on that. And you'll see that we've now switched to feature editor mode, which basically means that you can go in and change these fields if you want to. If you got one of them wrong or you couldn't spell Smith properly, whatever it is, you can go in and change it. But what we're going to do now is make this path more precise. So to do that, we're going to zoom in a bit, which I'll scale up here. And you can see that now it's much easier to align the path with the dotted line. What I do is move my crosshairs down to any point on the path and click it once, and a little blue ball shows up. And you'll find that you can now maneuver the ball to wherever you want it to line it up with the path. So the next thing I'm going to do is to click on this corner here. And then, excuse me, I beg your pardon. What I've done is a series of little edits enabling the path to A, line up with the dots pretty closely, and B, to go around the corners a bit more smoothly. So when I say you do a quick and dirty install when you're creating a feature, just chuck it in because it's so much easier and quicker to line it up accurately later when you're in edit mode. Now, this is very, very simple. If you're working on complicated shapes, if you're putting in a building or you're really doing a complicated path and you try and get it right the first time, you will find that halfway along you double click when you didn't mean to, and the whole lot sort of is saved, and then you've got it saved and you're only halfway along and it gets really tricky. So better do a quick and dirty add when you first start and then come along and tidy it up afterwards. So we're all happy with this. We can click on save and the whole thing has got saved. Now we don't want to do anything more, so I'm going to click on the X to go back to the maps. And in fact, we're just going to let you know where we are. So we've created a new layer. We've added a new feature, this footpath. We've completed its data record. We've moved the path around to get it lined up. And if you wanted to, we could have amended the data like this landowner's name whilst we were in the pencil stage. Now, what we want to do is to make that path thicker, change its color according to whether it's in good, bad, or dangerous shape, and label the path with its path ID. So to do that, we go back to our actual paths layer. We right-click anywhere in it, and up pops the little mini menu. And this time we're going to select Style. And it pops up with this screen, which is divided basically into 4 columns. So there's the style column, the labels column. This one varies, it moves around according to what you want to do. And then there's always the preview in the right-hand column, which is really handy because it shows you what you've done and what it's going to look like when you've finished. So in this case, we want to thicken the line of the footpath. We want to change its color according to its status, and we want to put a label on it. So the first thing we do is click on Style Type up here, click on the little down arrow, and you'll see it gives you a couple of choices, and single is what it always defaults to, but in this case, because we want it to change according to status, we're going to choose Cloud Spaced. Then we can move down to the next column, the class column, and then it says basically which column do you want the class to be based on. So what we actually want it to be on is not the path ID, but on the status. So I'm going to click on status. And now you'll find that here it's got with status. This column in the middle has now changed to classes. And what it's done is put the 3 types of records that you can have as status. And it's chosen colors, which I think are quite inappropriate. So it's not a good idea to have red as a good quality footpath, and not a good idea to have the dangerous one green. So we want to change those over. So the way to do that is you just click on the color. So I'm clicking on the red here, and up it pops and says you're currently in red. What do you want to be? And I say I want to be in dark green. So I click on that, and lo and behold, it's changed to dark green. Now I can go down to here and I'll do exactly the same again and change that to red. Over here, I'm going to click on the label column so that it'll ask me, what do I want the label to be? So I'm going to click there, and it says, what do you want? And I want the label to be the path ID. So I'm going to click on that. You'll notice that very cunningly, I've already changed these colors for you. So you've now got dangerous paths in red and safe ones in green. So over here, I'm now going to click on path ID. And notice over here on the preview, we've now got the path ID stuck in as a label, and that path ID will actually change to the correct information once we go back to the maps. Now, I also want the path to be much thicker on the map, just because it makes things stand out. So in the classes column, come down to the width and scale all these up. I'm going to make them all 10. Okay. At the same time, you want the labels to be text here, this little text to be larger, just so it shows up better on the main map. So we're going to change the labels text size here to 15. One of the things to do when you're making changes to the labels column is click on this little icon at the top, which assigns the changes to all the labels that you're using on this particular layer. So when we've done all that, we've got it all the way we want it to, I'm now going to click on Save. And then again, you can now see we've made a line much thicker. We've made the path ID a bit bigger, and everything else is the way we want it. So we click on Save. And this is the result on the path that we've been working on. So it's gone from that nice thin green line to a big thick one. It's got a label on it now, and the color code is gone green because it's a path in good condition. So that path is good. We're now ready for the next layer. So just to summarize where we are, we've created the first of the 2 layers that we're adding today. That's the line one, and we've added a footpath to it. We've styled the footpath to change its color, to make it thicker, and to give it a label. So what we're going to do now is create the second layer, which enables us to add all sorts of features to a footpath. These features are mostly points. So this is a layer with point geometry. The reason that we have this layer is so that we can record the condition and the maintenance of the stiles and the bridges and the things that go over or around or involved with footpaths. And you create that in exactly the same way as we created the first layer with slightly different column choices. So to save time, I'm just going to tell you that I've already done this, baked this up for you earlier, and we'll just go straight to the system. So I'm now switching back to where I intended to be all along. The two layers have now popped up in the parish layers, and I've moved both of them to the top. So the actual footpath is the one that you've seen up until now. And I've added footpath features and turned it on, which you can see by the little click. So you'll see that we've got the details of the footpath itself, but there aren't any features because although I've added the layer, we haven't added any features yet. So to do that, I'm going to right click anywhere on the features column. So I like that. And we're going to choose add a feature again. So up pops a blank record. I filled in some details for you again to save time. So the feature ID is the style and the style number. This ID number has come directly from the Rome Somerset information, so that we're keeping all the data on the same database that Somerset County Council is using, so that if we have any issues and we need to write to them, we've got the same details that they're using. So it's the style is in good condition, it's on this particular path. There aren't any issues on the style, so it's a 0 or low priority. And we updated the record in 2022. Now you'll notice it's still grayed out down here because we haven't actually put the feature on the map yet. So what we're going to do is add a style, which is down at this bottom of the green pathway here. So I just left click on that because on your system, if you're doing this for yourselves, your cursor will be a crosshairs, and you just click on the crosshairs and it puts a red dot for you when you've clicked. And you'll notice that the column here has changed, so you can put in the details of this particular feature that you've added. So I'm also going to, having added that one and we put in the details last time, the system automatically gives you a new blank record because it assumes you'll want to add another feature. In this case, we are going to add another feature. I want to put in a signpost there as well as the style. So I fill in the details here. In exactly the same way as before, and up pops the new feature right next door to the style itself. We finished adding new details, so I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to right click on this layer so that we come up with the mini menu, and we're going to choose style again. And this time you'll see it's slightly different. We've already got the classes level set up because I've set this up for you. So I've gone for class based. I got the class is going to be based on what type of feature it is. It's going to have a label based on the feature ID, and I think everything else is the same. So you'll see that the classes information here now is the 4 types of field of data that we allow to come into the feature type. So we've got styles, bridges, gates, and signposts. And at the moment, they're showing that they would be icons, and they'd look just like this little thing here, which is what you saw on the earlier slide, just the 2 red dots. Well, we think we can be better at that. So I'm going to click here on this symbol, and instead of just symbol, you find you've got a drop-down list, and we're going to change to icon. And then, excuse me, I'm sorry about the coughing. Up pops a box full of icons. Now, there are several hundred of these, so there are 2 ways of going through it. If you have an idea of what your icon might be called, you can type the name in at the top here, and it should single out just those ones that match your search item. But that's only really when you've got used to the fact that the icons are here, because you've got no idea what they've been called by the people who put them in. You might call it a flag, but somebody else might call it an ensign or a national flag or a different word. So for the start, we're just going to scroll through and see what it is that you want. But I can see that some of the things that I've got are bridges. So there's a bridge there I could click on. And there are others which will go scrolling through and see what you're going to choose. And then, as we did before, you can adjust for size and color in exactly the same way as the last time we did this. So what I've selected is a signpost sign and a sort of gateway sign for a style. And so both of our two records are now coming up in a different way. And they've come up with a larger size than they would have been by default, because I raised the size a bit. So same as usual, if you wanted to make any changes to this or to have a look at the data record, just click on it and up it pops. Or up it pops, sorry. So here's the data that I entered in earlier on your behalf. You'll note that I said that there's an issue on this particular signpost, that the letters need repainting. We made it a priority 2, which is not particularly high priority. But because our linksman is extremely efficient, he solved it 4 days later. And so we were able to say that the resolution was completed. So we also are taking the opportunity to here to show you that you can edit this record if you've got something wrong by clicking on the pencil, or you can add an attachment. And when you start this record off, you'll see the attachment. It just says attachments, and there's a plus sign here. So what I've done for you is clicked on the plus sign, and it comes up and says, you have no attachments, add one. So now I'm going to click on the add attachment, and I go off and I find a photograph of this particular signpost, which I add in here, and you'll see now it's edited. It offers me the opportunity to add another one. You can add anything to a data record here, okay? So it can be a maintenance record, it can be a Word document, it can be a photograph, it can be a spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. You can add anything you like to each and every record. So this is a way of keeping track of the amount of work that's been done, how frequently it's been done. In your asset register, you'll notice they're very keen on keeping dates of when last inspected, how often are the inspections done. You may find that that's useful to have in here. We can just add the details into these columns if that's what you want. But for the moment, I'm just showing you how far we've got. So on the next page, we're going to say, here's where we are. We've now created both layers. Both of them have got features in. And both of them have been styled. The first one was for symbols, i.e. circles, or sorry, just lines. And the second one was icons, where we chose bridges and signposts and gates and that sort of thing. So all we've got to do now is publish the results. Then I've got a couple of hints and tips to offer you, and we'll be into the Q&A session. And I'm sorry if I've overrun for anybody. So to get the results out in a table view, you do your little right click anywhere in the features layer and you choose table view. And what comes up are all the records that you've entered so far, and we've only entered 2, but they are sort of laid out in very handy spreadsheet order. And there are 2 really good features about this. One is that you can click on any one of these details and change them if you think they're wrong. So if you've misspelt Cox or you've misspelt Jones, this is where you can change it quickly. And then you can just simply export it, and it exports it as a CSV file, which is effectively a spreadsheet. So you can use Excel for printing off a list of all the things that you want your linksman to do. You have the ability to filter information according to whatever data you want to select. So if you want to select, for instance, all those items with a priority of 5, you can simply do that by saying, click in here and say issue column issue equals 5 or whatever, and that's all you'll get. Or if you're happier dealing in spreadsheets, which most people are, I think, you can just export the whole lot to a spreadsheet and then go into the spreadsheet and amend it for whatever you need and then print it out for your lengthsman. Beg your pardon, I'm sorry about this cough. So I've made the assumption that you all know how to print in either to a printer or to a PDF electronic copy. If you don't, then the knowledge base has got very good details for both. Ditto for the public map. So this is a bit of a cop-out, but I knew I was going to run out of time for you, so I've just kept it short. Excuse me. Even though you may have access to a third-party layer of footpaths, you still want to create your own footpaths layer because you can make changes to it and you can add it in details of maintenance and that sort of thing. So the fastest way of adding in your footpath layer is to bring up the layer of footpaths from PROW or anywhere else, and then just copy over it with your footpaths layer. So you have 2 layers sharing at one time. One is the PROW, and the other is your footpaths layer to add on. I think it's a great idea to get those people who are out dog walking to take photographs for you of things that are wrong. They can just email you the photograph from their phone, and their phone gives you a GPS location if you ask them for it, which you can then put straight into Parish Online if you don't recognize where they are. Some of the time, depending on how large your parish is, you've got no idea where the photograph is of. So you can either ask them to provide that, and the easiest way for them is to take the GPS reading. I strongly recommend that you set up a footpath committee as a subset because it gets a lot of the workload off you. And because they're related users to you, the parish council, they can all have access legally from the point of view of licensing to your Parish Online. So let me just show you quickly how we do this business of copying layers. So I've put on in pink the public right-of-way that Somerset County Council puts out. And in green is the one that we've just created today. And you can see they don't line up. So it will be a piece of cake now for me to go into the actual footpaths, right-click on it. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Click on the green, bring up the record, click on the pencil and pull this green line so that it matches the red. If indeed the red one is correct. Of course, if your green one is more correct, then you can leave it where it is. But if you can imagine that there are lots and lots of footpaths in your area, then it's very much quicker to trace existing ones that come up in your public rights of way when it comes to entering your own layer of footpaths. I hope that's clear. All right, so I've put down some links here which I hope will be very helpful. There are all sorts of really, really good videos produced by Parish Online themselves for the various topics that we've been talking about this morning. I've listed them all on this page, on the user group page, and put things like the length of time that the video runs so that you can scroll through and see if there are several on the same subject, which there sometimes are. You can choose the shorter one or the longer one, depending on what state you're in. The Parish Online knowledge base is good. If you have not already found it, you click on the cogwheel in the top right corner, a drop-down list comes down and you select help and support, and then you can type in whatever it is you want help and support on. For those of you who are not aware of them, the Parish Online user group runs a banter session at 3 o'clock every Friday. Everyone is welcome. The whole point of it is to have the group of usual suspects help out people who have issues. So feel free to call in anytime between 3 and 4 on a Friday afternoon with any question on Parish Online, and there will be sufficient expertise in place to help you out right there and then. And then if this course has been helpful, I'd love to know what other courses people would like. So perhaps I'm now going to sort of come back to you all and you can start talking to me. So let's end this system, come back to there. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. People. So let me just go through the questions in the chat. Emily had to leave. Yes, I'm sorry about that. I can let her have the system. Yep. Helen says, you say you can match up the feature ID, e.g. for a style, using county council data. Is there a way to import that and do it automatically, or is it just hand typed in? I'm afraid that it's got to be hand typed in, Helen. If you've got a lot to do, then you can send the data that the Parish Online, sorry, the public rights away stuff to Parish Online and ask them to import their data for you into your records, which they will do if it's a big shift. But otherwise, I'm afraid it's manual. Another one from Helen. For the example of the dates reported resolved, next time I have a date issue, does that overwrite the record to keep a list of all the dates resolved? Great question. It overwrites them. So what I suggest that you do as part of your record is create a document that contains these records for you. So people who are browsing through Parish Online can see the latest information, but if you want the historical information, you've got a Word document that you just keep it in. Or you can take snapshots of the screen with the PDF print function and just print, this is what it was like in January 2022, and this is what it's like in June 2022, or monthly, however you want to do it. But it does overwrite the way I've set it up, I'm afraid. And thank you, Trevor. Anyone had luck obtaining broadband to Parish Online? I will look into that one, Marion. I don't know. I'm sure there must be maps. If you go into Google and you Google broadband suppliers, you can type in your postal code and it'll come up with anybody that supplies that area. And you'll have to go to something like Trustpilot to see which ones come up with the best solutions. But out of interest, we have a little village called Knoll just down the road from us, which comes into the Long Sutton parish. They had absolutely appalling broadband. They collected the names of 100 people, said they were interested. The government said, in that case, we will pay for it. The payment was something like £120,000, and Openreach is putting in gigabit fiber to every household, which is astonishing. So I hope you find that useful. Trevor, yeah. Thank you. Good to see you. There is a rule from the government that says if it's going to cost £90,000 or more to get the service that you require from your village or your parish or whatever, then you just let them know and they will, that's the trigger figure. So in Knoll, they found that they had something like, I think the government allows £1,000 per household. So they came up with 120 people and that was £120,000, which is over the £90,000 trigger, and away you went. So, of course, it's Openreach putting it in, so they haven't done it yet, but we promised it's going to happen any day now. I think that's everyone's questions in the chat system answered. Does anyone want to ask anything face to face? You're all too frightened. Oh dear. That's very sad. Well, in answer to, yes.
Just quickly, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this. Are you able to send a copy of slides from today as well? If we put our email addresses in.
Yep. When I said, well, I've got a copy of all your emails because you're ready to get onto the line. So yes, when I said at the start that you'll be getting a copy of the presentation, I did mean the slides.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get in right at the very beginning. So
oh, right. Okay. Sorry, Rosalind. Yes. No, everyone will get a copy of the slides and the video. So that will come out afterwards. It would really help me, people, if you could please let me know if there's any other topic on which you think it'd be a great idea to have a training class like this. because I'm busy searching around for ideas that people want. What I have found is that most people, once they've attended 1 or 2 classes, they get the way that Parish Online runs and off they go. They don't need any further help. But there is a help system on the user groups page, which I put into that last page for you, the slide presentation. It's very simple to find it. It's just type in parishonlineusergroup.com. And there's all sorts of useful stuff there. And the help desk, the knowledge base within Parish Online itself is good. I'm sorry for having overrun. I beg your pardon.
Sorry, Graham. You is there any way of combining layers? I mean, you did the footpath line and then the feature points. I mean, I know if you tick them both, but can you produce them as one map for publication?
You certainly can, Helen, as long as you've only got one type of geometry in the layer. Yeah. That's the issue. If you can have only polygons or points or lines, and it is very simple to have 2 layers running together or 10 layers running together. So I'm sorry if that sounds like a pain, but it actually works. It sounds complicated, but it isn't when you get going.
Quick question, Graham. We're about the only one up here that uses Parish Online, so our county council have got nothing on at all. Is it fairly easy for them to contact Parish Online to get information like the pro data on?
Absolutely. It's actually completely free. Parish Online uses a product called XMAP, which is a much bigger system, a much bigger version of Parish Online, and they make it available for no charge to any county or unitary council that wants to use it. They say, just give us access to your database for 3 minutes and we'll do everything that needs to be done, and that's it. You never need to touch us again. So the beauty of it is there's no extra workload on the IT department or the GIS department. All the work is done by Parish Online, and they find it worth their while because they're doing it all the time. They're very fast, and it actually is just literally the work of a couple of minutes. So it takes councils longer than that because they've got to get the owner's permission, and they've got to sort of satisfy themselves that they're only giving access to the right database and not the wrong one. But once you've got through that palaver, it's very, very quick. So yes, by all means, write to your county council and copy in support at geosphere.com. That's geoxpher.com. Sorry, ere.com. I'll put it in the chat box for you.
Great, thank you.
And they'll take it from there. Just some experience that I had is that the last people on earth that you want to talk to about exporting data from your council is the IT department or the GIS department. Under no circumstances talk to them. They're far too busy, and B, outlying data people like councils, parish councils, are a pain in their neck, so they would rather we didn't have that. So what you need to go to is look for somebody in your council who's got a title of something like Customer Experience Director, Customer Service Manager, or some of them are even now Chief Service or Chief Customer Service Officer, something like that, because they are charged with listening to what your problem is and then insisting that the appropriate department gets on with it. And we found that it's made all the difference in the world to talk to that sort of person, because they're really interested. Their job is involving keeping the parishes happy. And that isn't the job of the IT department. The IT department's job is to keep the county council happy. So they're not interested. But when the chief experience officer, or whatever his name is, calls up and says, you've got to get this data out to the public rights of way stuff has got to get out, you'll find that they'll do it in a flash. And if you can tell them, and it's not even going to cost them any time or money, they're even more prepared to do it. And just to help you out, there are something like 1,800 councils around the country using Parish Online. So this is no longer a rare thing, it's becoming commonplace. Phew, sorry about that. You touched a nerve. again, for interest's sake, we had found that it was extremely difficult and very humiliating almost trying to get data out of the Somerset County Council until we found the right person to talk to. And then everything changed, including the IT department. Their attitude went from, wow, if we can be helpful, why wouldn't we be? And so that's what's happening to us now in Somerset. We've had 8 new layers of data chucked out in the last 6 months, and they're promising another 3 or 4 almost every month as we go forward. So a lot of it is education. A lot of them really don't understand that you want this information and can use it. And a lot of us don't know what the information is that they've got. Because there's a unitary called Bath and North East Somerset, which is not very far from me, who worked out 10 years ago now that this was a good thing to do. And they export 400 layers of information all the time to their councils, non-stop. And the councils don't have to pay for Parish Online because, oops, I'm losing data, losing contact. It's back again. Because the GIS department in the unitary finds that they save so much money by not having councils call them up, that they pay the subscription and tell them you do it yourself. And that works a treat. Everyone's happy. It's a win-win. So that's right, it's got nothing to do with adding footpaths, but it is to do with your daily life. Is there anything else I can help anybody with, please? Well, it's been really lovely to see you all. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry I overran, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And if you do have any ideas on what we can do about further courses, please do let me know. I'd love to sort of start writing them. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.